health is not determined by one factor alone. It's what we breathe, what we drink, what we eat. And today, each one of those parameters are getting affected by climate change. And I think those are important conversations to know. Well, the intersections of environment and health are pretty strong, but at the same time, they are not understood as very strong. If you look at the international conversation on climate, it's a very elite conversation that focuses on complex subjects. It's very politically driven, but at the same time, the local impacts that are being faced by people and local impacts that are being faced on public health, those are far overlooked. I think the biggest question at the COPs like these is how to link the brass tops with the brass tacks, how to make sure that the elite conversation also takes into account what's happening at the local and the hyperlocal level. How is it that water issues are affecting communities? How is it that poor air quality issues are affecting millions of people who are living in bad air? How is it that cyclones, droughts, floods, etc. are displacing people and impacting their day-to-day health? And how is it that newborns are being impacted even before they are born as a result of just the really mass impacts of climate change, which are quite intersecting with every aspect of human health today? The way these large international UN meetings work is that there is lots of negotiations that happen between countries and parties, but at the same time, on the sidelines, there are designated days to mark important intersections with climate. And today, incidentally, happens to be the day of health. Tomorrow will be the day of finance, and then there is the day of energy. And I suppose just having health as one of the first days in the 2 weeks of the deliberations that the COP will go through is not just a signal and symbolism of how important public health issues are for climate. It also goes on to show that policymakers, politicians, and decision makers who are coming from each of their countries must also realize that eventually they go back to their constituencies, and it is important that they bring change back to them. And how communities have faced various kinds of impacts, whether it's the wildfires in Miami, or the extreme heat or in India and China, or the breach of dam in Libya, it is quite clear that a lot of them have fingerprints of a changing climate. And if decision makers are able to address climate issues in advance in such a way that loss of human life and damage to public health is minimized, that is the outcome that every decision maker, every politician, and every policy maker will at least like to have at this COP. And therefore it is so basic and fundamental to human survival at the moment that climate and health are such broad subjects, but at the same time they're highly interconnected subjects. And to establish that interconnectivity, to have various organizations, doctors, health professionals talk about the importance of dealing with climate impacts is going to be going a long way in making a very complex subject of climate understood with a much wider audience. There are several important analyses that have been done in the world that we are already living on a 1.5 planet. The resources that we are consuming from the planet, the natural resources that we are taking, is more than what the planet can sustain. And definitely that's having a very clear impact on public health. There was a report that was released a couple of months ago which showed how the planetary boundaries that exist, human beings have literally breached 7 or 8 of those planetary boundaries, which means that there is havoc that's being caused in water and on land. And definitely just the fact that enough action is not being taken, the scale and pace of action is not enough. Installing solar panels is a good thing, but it's not bringing health changes to communities which are impacted by poor water supply, for example, or just salinity increasing in their food system. So these issues are really complex. Health is not determined by one factor alone. It's what we breathe, what we drink, what we eat. And today, each one of those parameters are getting affected by climate change, and I think those are important conversations to know. These conversations are very far from people's real lives, and it's a very small group of people who are representing the world. As the UN climate boss said yesterday, that these badges should actually be badges of honor, that you go back to your constituencies and the communities, and people also feel a connection with them. I suppose for everyone watching back at home, it's important to realize a couple of things. Climate is changing, and it's changing at a rate faster than any of the science models have anticipated. People's health is being impacted due to a changing climate, and the more and the faster we can take action at the scale of and the speed at which it is needed, the better we will be in making our cities, our towns, our countries a better place to be in. And I suppose last of all, the most important thing for people who are watching this back home is we're all part of the same world. Whatever decisions get made at these important meetings also have cascading effects back in our cities and in our towns. And to be able to realize that planning in our own backyard is in a way that is in line with what the global decisions are towards better fighting climate change, we will go a long way in fighting this crisis at the local level, the national level, the domestic level, and the international level. And to be aware and have visibility on all these levels is important.